6:38. Now, some COVID rules in Wales could be eased when they're reviewed next week. Among them include the controversial £60 fine for people who don't work from home when they can. Now, on Tuesday, the Health Minister, Elissa Morgan, said the law on it may change. The Welsh Conservatives have called for it to be dropped. Plaid Cymru threatened to vote against the introduction of the law last month. Well, Elissa Thursfield is Head of Employment Law at Gamlin's Law in Rhyl. Good morning, Elissa. Hello, can you hear me? I think we're having a few issues linking up with her at the moment, and we will keep trying. Oh, Alicia, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
We were having a few difficulties, but we seem to have got you now. Thank you very much for being with us this morning just to talk about this. Plaid Cymru's Rhun ap Iorwerth was saying in the Senedd that in terms of this £60 fine, his understanding is no one has actually been given a fine for this yet. What do you make of this law?
It's amazing you're able to confirm that, because I've had a really good look and again couldn't find anyone that had been fined. Frankly, I said at the start, it was going to be the most cited law by employees, but probably the least used by enforcement officers. The very fact that someone might fine someone who's going to work on the instruction of their employer when it's not their fault, it just smacked as totally unfair straight from the start.
So, with that in mind, does this law need to go altogether, or do you think it needs to be adjusted? For example, not fine the workers, the employees, but perhaps keep the fine for employers.
Well, the law in some respects has always been there. There was the requirement when we had the initial lockdown where people could work from home, they were to do that. And actually, at the moment, there is a fine for employers as well. It's a much larger fine. I believe it's around £1,000 if they ask someone to come to work when they shouldn't be doing. But ultimately, what this law does is it says that we don't trust employers to do what's sensible. We're not trusting them to do risk assessment, look at people's roles and decide who should be in and who shouldn't be in. You're relying on an enforcement officer potentially at the side of the road to decide if someone could work from home without knowing anything about that business. It doesn't work.
I mean, when it first came in, Elissa, were you having a lot of calls about this? Were people confused, concerned about it?
I would say most of the calls we're getting were from businesses who were saying they suddenly had a raft of employees who were frightened, saying, look, it's coming up to Christmas. If I get fined, I cannot afford this. And they were worried that, there were going to be patrols and people stopping them on the way to work. Thankfully, it looks like someone's been very sensible and that's just not been happening. But most of it was concern from employers saying, well, look, we've got a good relationship with employees. People are generally happy with the status quo. We're safe at work. Those who are working from home are still working from home. And then this came in before Christmas, and it caused quite a lot of unrest.
Yeah, I mean, working from home, it's become a really normal thing for so many of us, hasn't it? And a lot of people, have got on with it, but for a lot of others, it's not possible. In terms of rights, what are the rights that employees have when it comes down to this?
So employees have got the right to a safe place of work. So employers have to ensure that health and safety of their staff is paramount when they're at work. So if the workplace is safe and someone cannot work from home, then it is acceptable for them to go to work. But then equally, you've got employees whose mental health has been absolutely battered whilst they've been at home. They're isolated, they're struggling, they're juggling duties, and actually working from home isn't particularly safe for them. So there's a lot of considerations here for employers when they're making these decisions.
And just the whole concept of it, we mentioned, the message it sends, a reminder that there will be repercussions if you're not doing all you can to contain the virus. But, the fact, I guess, is, Elissa, police can stop you, ask where you're going. If you say, oh, I'm off to work, you can get fined. If you say, oh, I'm going to the pub for a drink, not a problem.
Yes, well, that was the thing. When this came in, it was perfectly acceptable to go to the pub. So, absolutely in jest, I suggested even to some of my friends, well, tell you what, have your work meetings in the pub because that's going to be okay. It just made no sense at the time that it was brought in, and it didn't seem that well thought through. And it doesn't seem to have been popular with anyone. The unions have hated it. Most employers have hated it because it sort of takes away a bit of their autonomy, and it was frightening employees.
Elissa, really good to talk to you. Thank you very much. Elissa Thursfield, Head of Employment Law at Gamlin's Law in Rhyl. 6:43 coming up.